take him outside of the room, and because he's still fighting them, they put him down on the ground, face down, and handcuff him. So they detain him. They don't arrest him, they detain him. And then they find out he actually is a U.S. senator, keep him out of the room, and afterwards, Christine Noem issues a statement. She tells Bill Malugin, then DHS issues a statement that said that they met afterwards and had a 15-minute meeting. And Bill Malugin from Fox News, who was there, it reports that it was cordial and beneficial. At least this is Noem's statement to Malugin. Said she said she had a 10 and 15-minute meeting with Padilla, and they swapped phone numbers. Said it was cordial and beneficial. He had concerns about ICE operations, and they opened up a line of communication. Said it was a good meeting and things are okay between the two of them. Why didn't he just, with the parenthetical that says outside of all the political reaction that's going on around this, and there's some political reaction in Washington. Chuck Schumer is apparently going to come to the floor and talk about, the authoritarianism of the Trump administration. But I'm asking people, reasonable people, if you had some guy in a golf shirt and jeans and a windbreaker start to approach the dais in the middle of a statement being made by a cabinet member and some other officials, would you think that that was a U.S. senator, or would you think that that was a threat? And I'm telling you, people who work in security would think threat first, and sitting U.S. senator would be somewhere down the line around extraterrestrial. Because what sitting U.S. senator would do that? They could have opted to participate in that meeting. He could have asked Christine Noem for an opportunity to rebut her. I don't know if she would have granted it, but at least they would have known he was coming, which apparently they didn't, because he never actually contacted Department of Homeland Security to let them know he was going to be there. Other people have pointed out on Twitter that Alex Padilla has been missing votes all week long in the Senate, presumably because he's in California, where the riots are taking place, trying to tell everybody that there aren't any riots and it's ICE's fault for enforcing the law. And we're really going to get into this. We're going to talk about what Christine Noem had to say a little bit later on this hour, and what the FBI has been doing out there. We're going to be talking a lot with Comfortably Smug about some of this in the next segment. But when you look at that, and this is going to be a huge cause now, this is come and see the violent inherent in the system. It's the Dennis the Peasant routine from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Come and see the violence inherent in the system. Help, help, I'm being repressed. Help, help, being repressed. Hands off of me. It's ludicrous. This guy is a sitting U.S. senator. He has plenty of opportunity to call press conferences himself or to ask for some FaceTime at this press conference. Could have stood outside and told the reporters there, I'm Senator Alex Padilla. I'm going to have a statement afterwards. Please come out. Please step out here and see me after this is over, and I'll give you a reaction in real time. Instead, he does this. And this is exactly where Democrats are at. We're going to talk a lot about this in today's show. It's all about performative politics, nothing about substance. This guy showed up to be made a martyr, and he got what he was looking for. He got the photo op that he was looking for, getting detained and handcuffed on the floor. Is it just me? Am I the reason why everything's going crazy? Well, we're going to be talking with Comfortably Smug from the Ruthless podcast to see if it's really me. Smug, is it just me? Is it every Thursday when I show up to do Hugh's show that just people go nuts? Is that what the deal is?
Well, I already called it. I said today's going to be an insane day, and it's been a bunch of those lately, it seems like, right?
You've seen the thing with Padilla, right? I know we didn't bring you on to talk about that because it just happened. But I mean, that's insane. It's insane to do something like that. And you know that now it's going to be, we're already starting to see it. John Harwood, who used to be on CNBC, is saying this shows the authoritarianism of this administration. I'm sorry, if I'm security at that event and somebody's coming up to the dais and there's a cabinet member up there and the guy wearing a golf shirt and jeans saying he's a U.S. senator, I'm taking the guy down first, and then I'm going to ask questions later. I think they handled it maybe even a little too gently.
I agree. And so that's the thing is, I've been getting a bunch of text messages about it of like, oh boy, did you see this? And it's really great because the Democrats have been telling us for years, no one is above the law. So If no one is above the law, no one is above the law. If you act up, if you act crazy, if you try to storm a secretary as they're speaking, there's going to be consequences. Every rational person understands this. And for years, Americans were told that, oh, it's not crime, it's poverty. Oh, it's not illegal immigration, it's undocumented. And folks got fed up with it. We saw the election results. We're going back to a system of order, of law and justice. And for Democrats and these hacks like Harwood, that means authoritarianism. Democracy's at stake.
Well, I would agree, democracy's at stake. We had a national election. You had one candidate that says, I'm going to enforce immigration law all the way down the line to the last jot and tittle. You had another one that said, no, we've got to find ways to bring these people in. They're all Americans. They're just Americans that need to find their way in. Voters voted the one person in, and now you've got people like Gavin Newsom, and not just Gavin Newsom, but Kathy Hochul. We're going to talk about Kathy Hochul, I think, in the next hour. Tim Walz, J.B. Pritzker, and then Karen Bass, of course, in Los Angeles, who were saying, you can't enforce federal law in our jurisdictions. I mean, that's basically election denial, isn't it?
Pretty much. And to me, it's the funniest coming from Gavin Newsom, because you had a guy who everyone saw the election results. The Democrats got trounced. This country decided they want President Trump. They want law and order. They want to return to actual laws and reason in this country. And for it feels like 1 month, Gavin Newsom saw the tea leaves and he was like, oh, I'm just a reasonable guy. I'm going to have Charlie Kirk on my podcast. I'm going to say you make some good points. But it doesn't take much time at all for him to just go right back to his old devices. He may be an idiot, and people try thinking he's not an ideologue, but any time he's given the opportunity, he shows he's just as far left as it goes. He doesn't want California to prosper. He wants it to be disorderly, like you're seeing it, and try to say, well, you see, it's Trump's fault for trying to enforce laws. It's unbelievable.
It's entirely unbelievable. And it's, he's basically taking the Orville Faubus, George Wallace position on federal authority, which is that the federal government doesn't matter in my jurisdiction because I say so. Karen Bass is the same way, just at the mayoral level. And I don't think that that's working for Democrats. And I don't know if you've seen this, Smug, but Politico has something today saying, the Democrats are thinking that maybe these scenes aren't working out so well for them, so they're going to start talking authoritarianism. And I mean, this is like journalist all over again, right? That was the talking point. Talking point's been out all day long, authoritarianism, and Alex Padilla shows up and provokes security into a response for that. I mean, I don't think that these things are coincidences.
It's not. This shows how their party is struggling. It's in such a bad place. They're trying to they try to send out these like memos. They have these donor-funded groups that they try to show PowerPoint presentations and come up with some kind of an action plan. How do we get men to start voting for us? How do we get people to start thinking we're a serious party? And you don't do it by storming a secretary while they're trying to speak. These people are out of ideas that appeal to the American people. They've put themselves into a silo where on every issue they find themselves on the 20 side of the 80-20, and they're wondering, how is it not working? This must be a communication problem.
Well, yeah, I mean, the idea that it's certainly a communication problem, right? They've got a position that is very popular with about 20% of the electorate, and they can't message the other 70 to 80%. I mean, and this is on immigration. It really is. You take a look at the Harvard-Harris Caps poll, which is not a conservative-oriented, surveyor, and it's 78 to 80% each month that want criminal illegal aliens arrested and deported. And the same poll shows that they believe that this is Donald Trump's biggest accomplishment, is closing the border and getting the deportations going. And Democrats keep trying to side with the rioters in the streets against those policies. And I was thinking at least at some point, the incentives would work in moderating them. And I'm a big believer in incentives, Smug, but the incentives clearly aren't doing anything here.
And so that, to me, is the heart of the problem for the Democrats. So they have essentially the left has spent the past 10 years trying to find all the heretics in their party. Oh, you have to say that, trans women are women, and you have to agree with us lockstep, or you get pushed out. And conservatives spent the past 10 years looking for converts. We've expanded our party. We have a massive tent. You may have different ideas, but we're all on the same side here. And this leads to a shrinking and shrinking share for the Democrats, where now they're beholden to 20% of the country, where 10% of the country are absolute nut jobs, and the other half have to just stick with it. It's a horrible situation, and I don't see how they come back from it.
Well, certainly not under current leadership, because none of their current leadership is standing up. With a couple of exceptions, there are a couple of exceptions that are going, hey, look, maybe we should be listening to the voters on this. I think there were 5 House Democrats that said something about this last week, Henry Cuellar being one of them, right, who's been saying it for the last 5 years. But Henry Cuellar is one guy in the House. He's not even in leadership. And all the governors here have the same problem. They're all standing by the sanctuary cities, sanctuary state declarations. Hochul got absolutely reamed out by Elise Stefanik today. I don't know if you had a chance to see that, but I'm sure you guys at the Ruthless Podcast are going to love that clip. If you haven't seen it yet, go look it up because it's awesome. But I'm worried about this, because if you have a political party that's not responding to rational incentives in a democratic political system, that does not bode well. I would rather have 2 rational parties that differ in values and differ in policy, but have the ability to adjust than what we've got right now.
Oh, I mean, 100%, but it is extremely clear at this point that the Democrat Party and their leadership is not in the least bit rational. They are advocating to bring dangerous, violent, illegal aliens who have been deported back to the country. You'll have Democrat congressmen flying down to El Salvador to try to rescue a criminal who's on video getting involved in smuggling humans across state lines in this country illegally. They will fight for them, but they're not going to fight for small business owners who are having their businesses rioted. It makes no sense.
Well, that's Comfortably Smug, at Comfortably Smug on X or Twitter if you prefer. And the Ruthless Podcast, go check that out. I'm sure they're going to be all over this. It's going to be amazing. Folks, I'm Ed Morrissey of HotAir.com, bringing the crazy, apparently, to American politics. Every time I fill in for Hugh Hewitt, somebody goes crazy. Elon Musk last week, Alex Padilla this week. Good thing I'm not coming back next week, and Hugh Hewitt's going to be back in the center chair. Of course, Dwayne's going to be in tomorrow. So who knows who's going to go crazy for tomorrow's show. But yeah, we're gonna be covering more of the crazy in the next segment. But for right now, let's talk about Angel Tree, because today's a big day in Hugh Hewitt's Angel Tree camping effort. We just passed our 248th scholarship to send another deserving child with a mom or dad in prison to the fresh air, fun, and gospel-centered activities at an Angel Tree camp near their home. But we still need your help, because we have got about 1 week left as we generate donations from Hugh's audience. We have a banner up at HughHewitt.com, and when you click on it, you can be among Hugh's many listeners to join their campaign this year. Your gift of $200 will help make it possible to send a kid to camp for an entire week. And to encourage you, here's a special message for Hugh's listeners from Heather Rice-Minus, the president and CEO of Prison Fellowship.
If you're listening and thinking about the opportunity to give, I think of this little boy we caught on tape while he was at camp, and he asks, I hear people talking about God. Well, who's God? And they share with him, it's about the opportunity to meet your Lord and Savior. And so he said, and then they gave me a Bible, and I read it, and it got real interesting. And just this child's, rendition of the experience at camp and the experience of coming to understand that there is a God who came down in the form of his son, Jesus, and loves this little boy so much. So I would just encourage you, if you feel so moved, to give to a child like that all across the country who can have this opportunity to hear the good news.
So it only takes $200 to send a deserving child to Angel Tree Camp, and your gift in any amount will help. Just please go to HughHewitt.com and click on the Make a Difference in the Lives of Prisoners Children banner, or you can phone in your most generous gift in any amount by calling 888-206-2764. That's 888-206-2764. And thank you for helping me send these wonderful children to Angel Tree Camp this summer. You'll be making a difference in a child's life for eternity. And certainly, that's not crazy. That's just a good, rational approach to social policy and to charity. It's a loving gesture on the part of all of our listeners. Can't thank you enough for your participation in this. Also not crazy, the American Legislative Exchange Council, which is proud to announce the launch of the Process and Procedures Task Force, a new initiative promoting clear rules of engagement between government and its citizens. This is the second new ALEC task force launched this year. marking a period of continued growth for the largest nonpartisan voluntary membership organization of state legislators. ALEC members are demanding leadership, real solutions, and a principled federalist framework to restore voter trust and safeguard the electoral process. The Process and Procedures Task Force will hold their inaugural meeting at the 52nd ALEC Annual Meeting, which takes place July 16 through 18 in Indianapolis, Indiana. To learn more about what's happening in your state and others, and watch federalism in action, sign up for ALEC's free weekly newsletter at alec.org/Hugh, alec.org/Hugh, and sign up now for that. And yeah, it's not crazy at all either. I'm bringing the crazy. ALEC is not bringing the crazy. Angel Tree Camp is not bringing the crazy. Only Ed Morrissey brings the crazy. I don't know what to tell you. Hotair.com, we show up here, we bring the crazy. And Alex Padilla, we're going to get back to him in the next segment because he just held a press conference. I haven't even heard what it is that Padilla has to say. Senator Padilla, I guess, incognito senator, the senator traveling with a golf shirt and jeans and no Senate pin and shows up to rando press conferences just because he wants to get in a few words here. Yeah, there's all sorts of Sturm und Drang over this in Washington, D.C. as well. We might have a couple of clips of that in the next segment. But the crazy is coming. The crazy is coming back. But ALEC and Angel Tree Camp, and they're not part of the crazy. They're part of the solutions to the crazy. And look, I mean, the one thing that I could say about this, and in terms of what ALEC is promoting here, is federalism, is that if we had a really good understanding of federalism, you wouldn't have to have these conflicts going on because the states would have allowed the federal government to enforce immigration law properly for the last 20 years rather than declaring themselves, ollie oxen-free zones for illegal aliens. And you wouldn't have the federal government interfering with state operations through the use of grant money and other types of things and attaching all sorts of strings to it to force states to do what it is that the elites in Washington, D.C. want to do. There is a win-win here, which is federalism. Federalism would actually be the win-win here so that states could feel like they could run their own states and the federal government would still be able to enforce federal law where it is applicable. That's also not crazy. So maybe I'll stop talking about that and we'll move on to the next segment of More Crazy with Ed Morrissey of hotair.com right here in the Hugh Hewitt Show. I'm bringing the crazy to the Hugh Hewitt Show live from the ReliefFactor.com studios on Salem News Channel as well as Salem Radio. And we've got more crazy for you because we've got more of Alex Padilla and his press conference after being hauled out of Secretary Kristi Noem's press conference and being detained. We're going to get to that in a moment. But for those of you who missed this a little earlier in the hour, why don't we play cut number one really quickly again, just to provide everybody the context of what Alex Padilla is going to be talking about. Here's cut number one.
I'm Senator Alex Padilla. I have questions for the Secretary because the fact of the matter is a half a dozen felon criminals that you're rotating on your heads off.
How many of our ICE agents have been doxxed?
Now, we saw this from the other angle, and that's a longer cut. We don't need to play that one right now. But we saw this from a different angle, and it's very clear that Secretary Noem had just gotten up and started the press conference, and she's delivering her opening statement here, declaring what it is that Department of Homeland Security is doing, and she's going to get into some of the results after this. And that's important context to remember for what's going to come up from Alex Padilla in just a moment. Alex Padilla then tried to approach the dais while wearing a golf shirt, jeans, no Senate pin, apparently not having identified himself to anybody in the room and wasn't expected to be there, while you have a cabinet official and some other officials on the dais. You got a strange guy walking up in the middle of a statement, which is weird. It's strange. And security reacts, I would say gently, moving him out of the room while he's spouting off about being a U.S. Senator. Now, of course, he does turn out to be a U.S. Senator, but I doubt very seriously that any of the people doing security in that room knew that. What he looked like was a crazy guy. And you can see a little bit more of this here. And he's not asking a question. He's trying to deliver a statement as they're pushing him out of the room, and then he gets angry and says, hands off, in this part of the clip. So then Alex Padilla holds a press conference, which he could have done right from the beginning, right? He could have waited until that press conference was over and then held a press conference to rebut whatever it was that Noam had to say. So he holds a press conference after getting hauled out of there. Here's what Alex Padilla had to say.
Over the course of recent weeks, several of my colleagues, have been asking the Department of Homeland Security for more information and more answers on their increasingly extreme immigration enforcement actions. And we've gotten little to no information in response to our inquiries. And so I came to the press conference to hear what she had to say, to see if I could learn any new additional information.
Wait right there for just a moment. We're going to stop here. We're going to pause again in just a moment again, too. He came there to hear what she had to say. She had only just begun to start talking about what she had to say. She wasn't even done with her opening statement, and he was trying to interrupt it. He was coming up to the dais to interrupt her. He wasn't there to hear what she had to say. He was there to stop her from saying it. So continue on.
And at one point, I had a question. And let me emphasize, just as we've emphasized the right for people to peacefully protest and to stand up for their First Amendment rights, for our fundamental rights. I was there peacefully. At one point, I had a question. And so I began to ask a question. I was almost immediately forcibly removed from the room. I was forced to the ground, and I was handcuffed. I was not arrested. I was not detained.
Stop right there. All right. If you're on the ground and you're in handcuffs,
Guess what?
guess what? You're detained. That's what that means.
Fact check, false.
False. Dwayne, fact check, false. We should get Glenn Kessler on here to talk about it. No, we shouldn't. I'm just kidding.
Well,
fact check,
then-
false.
Yeah, then we'd never get to the bottom of things.
Right, exactly. Yes. If you're on the ground and your hands are behind you and you're wearing the steel bracelets, you're detained. You're not necessarily arrested. And he wasn't in the end. He was not arrested. And this is what happens when police are dealing with disorderly conduct, is that if somebody is not ending that disorderly conduct, they will put you in handcuffs until they can figure out what it is that's going on. And I have this addiction to YouTube videos that involve arrests. And oftentimes the police will say, hey, look, boss, these can come off just as quickly as they went on. We're just here to ensure our safety and yours while we conduct this investigation.
So when Padilla gave his little press conference afterwards, right, his little 2-minute address,
yes.
you know who flanked him at the dais?
I would imagine security.
Security. Now,
Why? Because he's a senator. He's a U.S. senator. Yes, they should be.
What do you suppose would have happened if a crazy person started shouting at him while he was speaking and approached him at the dais? What do you suppose would have happened?
Exactly what happened in that room, although perhaps a little rougher.
Correct.
But I mean,
And for obvious reasons.
Yeah, security reacted properly in this case. You don't, it's a strange thing to do. And he's absolutely lying through his teeth. He was not there to listen to what Noam had to say. He was there to interrupt Noam and to lecture Noam and to hijack the press conference. You know what it kind of reminds me of, Dwayne? I mean, I think you'll laugh about this. Remember Andrew Breitbart hijacking the press conference from
Yes.
Anthony Weiner?
Yes.
That's what this reminds me
Well,
of.
except Weiner wasn't at the microphone.
No, he
wasn't
there.
there.
He hadn't showed up. That was the thing. This is years ago. Our late friend Andrew Breitbart was at that press conference where Carlos Danger was going to explain his
Right.
his rather racy picks, right?
And he was late to his own press conference for an hour, and everybody's looking around, and they all saw Breitbart there and said, hey, well, can we ask you some questions? Sure. And so he got behind the microphone and gave his own press conference.
And it was a thing of beauty, but he didn't push anybody out of the way. There was literally
And
nobody
he
up
didn't
there.
approach anybody in a threatening manner in the process.
And Andrew wouldn't have done that. Andrew would have
Out of
waited until
style.
he would have waited until the Q&A, and then he would have ripped Anthony Weiner over that. Carlos Danger. This is nonsense. This is a PR stunt. Ed Morrissey of HotAir.com going crazy on you. Or at least I'm bringing the crazy. Last week, this week, I brought the crazy. Kurt Schlichter doesn't bring the crazy. I bring the crazy, pal. It's such fun crazy. Last week wasn't so much fun crazy. Last week was sort of weird crazy. This is kind of fun crazy. In a way, by the way, really quickly, just saw this flash up there. The rescissions package passed the House by 2 votes, 214 to 212. So that'll go on to the Senate, and we might see. I think it's still a $9 billion rescission package, and so that will be the first Doge cuts. There may be more rescission package. I'm expecting more rescission packages coming down the pike, but those are privileged votes, so filibusters don't apply. Simple majorities will pass those, and Donald Trump can then sign it. So that is one Doge thing that's off. That's the crazy from last week. So I mentioned this in the first segment. I want to finish up with this. We saw the journalist bat signal go out this morning on Politico, right? Which is normally where you'd see it anyway, which is that Democrats were worried about the political impact that the riots in Los Angeles are having because the mostly peaceful 2.0 narrative isn't working. By the way, Matt Taibbi, really wish we could have gotten him today. He wrote a great piece on this 2 days ago, and he's got a new video up today about what's actually happening in Los Angeles. And showing the actual violence, things that are going on down there. It's a great video. If you haven't seen it, I'm going to feature it a little later on at hotair.com, but you can go to Racket News on Substack and catch up with it there. But this was the journalist message du jour, which was that stop talking about the riots, stop talking about protests, start talking about authoritarianism. So when you see Alex Padilla try to get arrested, which is exactly what he did today. He knows better. He's been around Washington. He's been around politics. He knows that you don't just approach a dais without making arrangements to let people know that you're there. You don't interrupt somebody in the middle of their opening statement by approaching the dais because you know you're going to provoke a security response. That's exactly what he did. This is a provocative action. And he's intending to provoke mid-level violence, as our friend Adam Baldwin would say, and he did. And so now they've got the talking point that they wanted all day long, which is to talk about authoritarianism. It's nonsense. This is manipulation. This is exactly what Democrats and the media wanted. They wanted a way to change the subject away from rioting in Los Angeles being not just allowed but encouraged by Democrat politicians there. They want to get away from even the immigration issue now because they realize it's very toxic and they want to talk about authoritarianism. And that's exactly what Padilla did today. Do not be fooled. Do not let the protection racket media gaslight you on this. This was deliberate. It was a deliberate provocation. Don't fall for it. All sorts of craziness going on. Now, we're going to try to drill down into the actual rational now. I mean, we spent an hour on the crazy. I'm going to give you a little tiny taste of the crazy because we finished off the last hour by talking about how this is basically an attempt by Democrats to change the subject and to shift the focus from criminal illegal aliens and riots to the supposed authoritarianism of the Donald Trump administration. And just to wrap things up, Kristi Noem went on Fox just a couple of minutes ago. Chad Pergram is reporting on this. He says, we sat down to 10 to 15 minutes and talked about the fact that nobody knew who he was. He didn't say who he was until he'd already been lunging forward and people were trying to detain him for quite a period of time. And if he'd requested a meeting, I would have loved to have sat down and had a conversation with him. That coming into a press conference like this is political theater. It's wrong and does a disservice to the country. So part of this is trying to change the subject. Let's talk a little bit about what else it might have been too, is that Kristi Noem was going to get up there and talk about what it was that, who the people were that they were trying to round up, what it was that they were coming up against in California as they're trying to enforce immigration law and find actual criminal illegal aliens. There are a number of people that they're looking for who are they're not looking for them just because they're here illegally. They're looking for them because of their criminal activities while they're here. And let's go to cut number 10, where Kristi Noem, once this whole mishegas got moved out into the hallway, Kristi Noem started talking about some of the people that they actually were able to find in these raids.
The images that we've seen out of Los Angeles the last several days has simply been un-American by the protesters and the violence that we've seen perpetuated. Masked thugs are assaulting police officers. They're setting vehicles on fire. They're waving foreign flags on American soil while burning American flags. And they've damaged public property and destroyed private businesses. We need to make sure that we are continuing to protect the citizens that live here and want this community to be safe. Let me give you just a few examples of those who have been rioting that many politicians like Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass are defending. There was a Vietnamese illegal alien who committed a mass shooting at a graduation party in 1994 that we've been able to take off the streets. A Filipino illegal alien that was convicted of an assault with intent to commit rape that we've been able to bring up into custody and incarceration. You see behind you some more profiles of individuals that have brought into custody through the operations we have here. A Mexican illegal alien convicted of willfully cruelty to a child, and on and on and on. Those individuals and those criminals are now off the streets of Los Angeles because of the activities that have been conducted here in the last several days and will continue to operate for days to come.
And so Kristi Noem was not the only person who was at this press conference. U.S. Attorney Bill Asaley, who actually announced earlier today, and I should mention this, that the FBI has tracked down and arrested the man who was distributing the bionic face masks that were being distributed out to rioters. Like, apparently, there's hundreds of these things that were being distributed out. They're expensive. They're like $60 to $70 a pop. So somebody is spending money on the riots. There's some organization that's going on behind there. There's some money that's going on behind there. And earlier in the week, I believe it was on Monday, it was either Monday or Tuesday, they had video of a guy opening up his car and handing these things out to the rioters. Apparently, this guy wasn't too bright because based on the video, they were able to figure out who it was. Either that or somebody tipped him off. But this morning, they arrested the guy. It turns out he's part of the Brown Berets, which honestly, I grew up in Los Angeles. I knew about the Brown Berets. I hadn't heard about them in decades. I just figured they were defunct. Apparently not. They're still around. It's part of the old Chicano movement. It's a paramilitary group that was structured on the same basis as the Black Panthers. It was the Chicano movement's answer to the Black Panthers, which was the Brown Berets. And so apparently he's a member of that. They arrested him. And Bill Asaley was the one who announced this. So let's go to cut number 11, and hear what Bill Asaley had to say.
On behalf of my office and the Department of Justice, I'm here to show our support and our collaboration with the Department of Homeland Security in their mission to protect the American people and to do immigration enforcement operations, specifically at targeted known criminals, which is the primary focus of most of our missions to date. I want to also thank the National Guard and the military. We had judicial warrants to do what we did on both Friday and Saturday. And the amount of resistance and organized agitators that showed up to try to impede us was overwhelming. And we're really grateful to the President for deploying the Guard, which allowed us to continue our mission undeterred, to enforce the law, and to keep our people and our buildings safe. And that's really important. And my office has been aggressive in bringing charges. We charged several people over the weekend who dared to assault our agents. They threw rocks, they threw stones, they were breaking up concrete. It was out of control and it was violent. And some people in the state of California have been conditioned to think that there's no consequences for criminal activity. And you know, that might be true for the state of California, but it's not true with the federal government. And we will bring charges and you will go to federal prison. This is the federal government. This is not the state government. As the President said, if you spit, we hit, and we'll hit you with a felony.
And that's exactly what you need to do in order to put an end to this. And this is exactly why Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass have been trying to obstruct federal law enforcement really for years, right? This is the whole sanctuary city thing. We're going to get into that. I think we're going to have some testimony from Kathy Hochul about the results of sanctuary city policy that she put in place in New York, sanctuary state. Before we get to that, though, and we're going to talk a little bit more through this. So this is exactly what it was that Kristi Noem and Bill Asaley wanted to say today, which was that we had judicial warrants for these people. We knew where they were. these raids were specifically targeted to find these particular suspects and to put them into custody. And they had to do this. This is something that was left unsaid. They had to do this because the state of California and the city of Los Angeles refused to cooperate and go out and arrest these people themselves. Because they are, California is a sanctuary state and Los Angeles is a sanctuary city, and they won't cooperate with federal law enforcement. So federal law enforcement had to go in there and do it themselves. And when they were under assault, trying to execute judicial warrants on these people, Donald Trump called in the National Guard and the U.S. Marine Corps to protect the federal operations that were taking place. And that's an important distinction, because the next segment we're going to talk about this. It's a little too much to handle in the 1 minute that we've got left here. But there's a hearing today in federal court about the deployment of the National Guard, or the federalization, really, of the National Guard in this instance, and the deployment of the Marines. Gavin Newsom wants the court to order Donald Trump to reverse that deployment. He lost on the application for TRO, but the judge in the case, here is retired Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer's brother, set a hearing for this afternoon. Well, it's taking place right now, so we should know something later today about what the judge is going to rule. We'll go over that in the next segment. Well, I am still crazy after all these years, and I bring the crazy on Hugh Hewitt Show. Ever since it moved to the afternoons, man, I guess I just inspire it. I'm Ed Morrissey of HotAir.com, filling in for Hugh Hewitt today from the ReliefFactor.com studios here in Central Texas. The crazy moved into a courtroom today because Gavin Newsom tried to sue Donald Trump and force the removal of the National Guard and the Marine Corps from the streets of Los Angeles. Donald Trump is authorized that deployment under Title 10, Section 12406, which allows, under narrow circumstances, the president to federalize the National Guard in any particular state and deploy them. And Governor Newsom is saying that it was he didn't have the authority to do that, that this wasn't a situation that under which Section 12406 applied. He tried to get a temporary restraining order from Judge Charles Breyer, who is hearing the case this afternoon. Judge Charles Breyer, not Stephen Breyer, but I believe it's Stephen Breyer's younger brother, ruled against him, said that he would hear arguments from both sides, but did not want to impose any orders yet until after hearing arguments from both sides. Here's the thing, and this came up specifically during U.S. Attorney Bill Assaley's part of the press conference that we just listened to in the previous segment, which is that federal law enforcement had judicial warrants to find specific individuals. They were pretty sure they knew where these individuals were. They were going to raid certain locations in order to find them and arrest them. This is not the type of raid that you sometimes see where they go to a meatpacking plant. I think this did actually take place in the Midwest this past week. It might have even been in Texas. I'm trying to think about that, where they just show up at an employer because they know that there's a bunch of people that are working there illegally, and do an immigration check on people and arrest the people who are there illegally and not lawfully able to work. This was looking for very specific people. These were people with criminal records. These were people with criminal actions pending. So this is the type of thing that state and local officials could have done, but refused to do because they don't want to engage with the federal government. So why that matters is that Section 12406 allows the president to federalize the National Guard in a state and deploy them in support of federal operations and in protecting federal officers and buildings when there is violence, or there's a threat of violence, or there's an intimidation campaign going on. This is exactly what Eisenhower did with Orville Faubus in, I think it was 1958 in Little Rock, Arkansas. You can look up the Little Rock, Arkansas crisis. Faubus called out the National Guard to prevent the schools from being desegregated. Eisenhower then federalized the National Guard, turned them around the other way and said, all right, now you're going to open up these schools. And that's exactly what happened. He did this, it wasn't Eisenhower, but it was, I believe, Johnson that did the same thing to George Wallace in Alabama in 1965. And it's the exact same thing. They're enforcing federal law, and the local authorities were obstructing that enforcement. And so Section 12406 allows the president to nationalize federalize the National Guard and deploy them in order to enforce federal law. And that's exactly what's happening here. That's it. That's exactly what's happening. Now, you'll hear a lot in the media about no president's done this in 60 years. That's because no president has had to do it in 60 years. After Orville Faubus and George Wallace, everybody else got the memo. You can't do this. And for the most part, most governors and mayors, up until very recently, just understood that it was part of their job to cooperate with federal law enforcement, even if they didn't particularly like the policies of the laws that they were enforcing. It's only in the last 10 to 12 years, maybe slightly longer than that, where you have these governors and mayors who are arrogantly deciding that the federal government isn't allowed to enforce the law in their jurisdictions when it comes to immigration. And it's absolutely false. And one of the reasons why it's false is because Barack Obama made it clear that that federal government has the jurisdiction for immigration. Because I don't know if you'll remember this, but about 10 years ago, maybe a little longer than that, might have been 2012. Barack Obama was not enthusiastically enforcing immigration law. It wasn't as bad as during the Biden years. And actually, Barack Obama has been called the deporter in chief because he actually deported a lot of people, a lot of illegal aliens during his term in office, because he was at least understanding that you had to enforce the law when it came up. But he wasn't enthusiastic about it, and he wasn't engaging with local officials to try to round up criminal illegal aliens. And so the state of Arizona decided, they passed a law that said, they were going to start enforcing federal immigration law instead. And it went to court, and Barack Obama won. The federal courts, and I think it went all the way to the Supreme Court, the federal courts ruled that that the federal government has the right to set its own policies for enforcing immigration law. They're the only ones with jurisdiction to do that. And if you don't like that, then elect a different executive. Well, the American people in last November elected a different executive. He took office on January 20th. And he is putting in place the types of enforcement policies that people very clearly want. Again, these are 70-30 or 80-20 issues. 80% of the American public want criminal illegal aliens deported. They want the border secured. And so these are the policies that this was not a crypto issue during the last election. This was one of the main issues during the last election. The American people had their say, and they elected an executive who promised and is now delivering firm enforcement of these. And governors and mayors are trying to interfere with that process and basically are trying to nullify the election by refusing to protect federal agents who are out there doing their jobs. And so that's exactly what Section 12406 is about. It's about making sure that federal law enforcement has the ability to execute and enforce these laws. As long as they're not doing anything other than that, the state of California doesn't have a case. They can't do anything about this. And I suspect that Judge Charles Breyer already knows this and is going to tell him that. But even if he rules differently, by the time it gets to the Supreme Court, it's going to stand. There's no way that this claim makes it past the Supreme Court. I'm bringing the crazy, folks. But you know what's not crazy is Angel Tree. Today's a big day in Hugh Hewitt's Angel Tree camping effort. We just passed our 248th scholarship to send another deserving child with a mom or dad in prison to the fresh air, fun, and gospel-centered activities at an Angel Tree camp near their home. But we still need your help because we have about 1 week left as we generate donations from Hugh's audience. We have a banner up at hughhewitt.com, and when you click on it, you can be among his listeners to join our campaign this year. Your gift of $200 will help make it possible to send a kid to camp for an entire week. And to encourage you, here's a special message for his listeners from Heather Rice Minus. the president and CEO of Prison Fellowship.
If you're listening and thinking about the opportunity to give, I think of this little boy we caught on tape while he was at camp, and he asks, I hear people talking about God. Well, who's God? And they share with him, it's about the opportunity to meet your Lord and Savior. And so he said, and then they gave me a Bible, and I read it, and it got real interesting. And just this child's, rendition of the experience at camp and the experience of coming to understand that there is a God who came down in the form of his son Jesus and loves this little boy so much. So I would just encourage you, if you feel so moved, to give to a child like that all across the country who can have this opportunity to hear the good news.
It only takes $200 to send a deserving child to Angel Tree Camp, and your gift in any amount will help. Just please go to hughhewitt.com and click on the Make a Difference in the Lives of Prisoners' Children banner. Or you can phone in your most generous gift in any amount by calling 888-206-2764. That's 888-206-2764. And thank you for helping us send these wonderful children to Angel Tree Camp this summer. You'll be making a difference in a child's life for eternity. And you know what else is not crazy? What else is not crazy is my Solaire grill. I am so delighted. I love talking about my Solaire grill, so much so that all my friends who haven't yet bought a Solaire grill have decided that they're tired of hearing about this. So I'm going to tell you guys about it because it's awesome. BestHotGrill.com, literally my friends at BestHotGrill.com. There are a lot of special events coming up soon, and BestHotGrill.com recommends the gifts of good grilling and healthy eating. If you have a mom, a dad, a grad you want to honor, do it with the gift that will be used, be unforgettable, and truly hot. That would be a Solaire infrared grill from BestHotGrill.com. Solaire infrared grills heat up to 1,000 degrees in just 3 minutes. It produces juicy, tasty food that is unmatched by any conventional grill. Maybe you're hitting the road or having a staycation. Solaire has hot and fast portable built-in and cart models to help you step up your grilling. All Solaire infrared grills are made in the USA and are built to last. Solaire grills deliver the wow that everyone likes to get in a gift or major purchase. Learn more about the amazing Solaire infrared grills at besthotgrill.com. That's besthotgrill.com. I'm telling you, I love to go crazy on my Solaire grill. It is so much fun to cook on this. I talked about it a little bit last week while Elon Musk was going crazy. We'll talk about it now while Alex Padilla is going crazy. When you cook steaks, I'm a big steak eater, right? I don't usually do chicken on grills. It's not usually my choice on that. Sausages, hot dogs, man, it's all great. But steaks, you want to get that nice bark on both sides with the juiciness locked in. And I mean, you can cook it pretty much to any temperature you like, right? You can do rare, medium well, and then shoe leather, I think, is the fourth one, right? Dwayne, shoe leather, isn't that the right one?
Yeah. What? Well done, you mean?
Yeah, shoe leather. That's what I said.
I think it is. I think it is cooked enough where you can't see the marks where the jockey hit it.
See, now, Dwayne, we're gonna have a chat. But I will tell you this: I have made the mistake of making well done steak, which it's not my favorite at all.
Yeah.
But it's still juicy. When you do it on the Solaire, they give you a chart, they give you instructions, they practically hold your hand all the way through the process.
The obvious sweet spot that you go for a steak is medium plus. That is that happy medium between medium and medium well. It's halfway between. It's not quite medium well. And it's medium minus. I would say medium minus, somewhere between rare and medium rare. That's the sweet spot. All right, sweet spot's medium plus.
I don't know what to tell you about a guy who thinks that the '80s were the greatest decade for music. Obviously Dwayne has
crazy
some
for
issues.
You, baby, Madonna.
Oh yeah, Madonna. There you go. That's a heck of a recommendation right there, Madonna.
Seal singing crazy. How can you not watch that? I'll give you Miami Vice.
I'll give you Seal. I will give you Seal, but grant me the Solaire hot grill, medium rare, perfecto, every single time.
Medium plus. You want your steak as red as the glow of a Waymo.
I want a mega hat red when I get my steak off that grill, and Solaire delivers it every single time. BestHotGrills.com. My goodness, we have so much stuff to cover And we got a great hour lined up next hour, too. So you're definitely going to want to stick around. We've got John Andrasik for Five for Fighting coming on. Cam Edwards. Jim Talent will be on with us. We might talk a little bit about what's going on in the Middle East, because it does look like portents are afoot there for some war action that might be taking place soon. Donald Trump today speaking about that, saying he didn't think it was imminent, but he says it might very possibly happen, that there is some sort of an attack on Iran. Apparently talks have broken down with Tehran, and so we will see where that goes. But that's next hour. Right now we're still talking about well, I think we're done talking about Alex Padilla and the craziness there. Talk a little bit about what happened with Gavin Newsom and Town Hall. You know, I write for Hot Air. I'm a managing editor for HotAir.com. It's part of the Town Hall Media complex, which is part of Salem. We're all part of the same company. And my good friend Larry O'Connor, and I know Dwayne really loves Larry O'Connor. Dwayne thinks that Larry O'Connor is just the bee's knees, and
Larry O'Connor is great. He is the second best talk show host in D.C.
There you go. There you go.
I know. Said that.
Hey, look, I'm just here to stir things up, man. I'm not here to start things up. I'm just here to stir things up. But Larry O'Connor did what we all do when we're dealing with a politician's speech, right? Especially when it's televised, especially one that is supposedly supposed to be an important policy or, governance sort of speech. Gavin Newsom a couple days ago delivered a speech in which he basically was going after Donald Trump for quashing the First Amendment in Los Angeles and accusing Donald Trump of wanting to silence his critics. And the First Amendment gives you the right to protest. And he was, telling Californians to rally to his cause, to fight for the First Amendment and not be silent against the authoritarianism, again, that narrative, of Donald Trump. So Larry O'Connor, and, he's been on here. Everybody knows who Larry is. Larry's great. He's a personal friend of both of ours. We love him to death. He's a terrific guy. Larry does what everybody does, right? He starts parsing out the speech, and he takes some clips from the speech so that he can criticize it. Now, this is, in the business, we call this fair use. Even for material which is copyrighted, which we're going to get to in just a second, but normally, that's not an issue when you're talking about office holders delivering an address that is directly on business, public business, right? This was a gubernatorial speech. It was a policy speech. It was an angry policy speech, but it was a policy speech. So Larry's clipping it up, and he's doing his thing, and they do the show. This is on townhall.com. And they put it up on YouTube. And, we all do things on YouTube. And if you're a producer, one of the things that you know is that if you include copyrighted material that's not covered by fair use, you're pretty much going to have your video demonetized. They're going to scale down the access to it, and they're going to demonetize it, which means that you can't make money off of this thing. And Larry that's one of Larry's income streams, right? So he does this, and it turns out that Gavin Newsom put this speech on his podcast. And his podcast is run through iHeartMedia, which is a fine company. I mean, iHeartMedia is they do a wide range of audio and video publications. A lot of podcasting on iHeartMedia. So iHeartMedia files a copyright infringement complaint on Larry's YouTube, and YouTube pulls the video. So now you can't access Larry's show. And we're all stunned because I have never heard of a politician claiming copyright on a political speech as part of his job of being in public office. That is not, it's not, as far as I'm concerned, it's not even copyrightable. But even if it was, even if you have a copyright issue, there is such a thing as fair use. And fair use means that you can, we do this all the time. You see us doing it all the time here. You can take short clips of items so that you have the ability to expand the conversation. You can criticize it. You can support it. You can talk about it. That's what fair use is in the copyright realm. So even under that, this ruling by this complaint by iHeartMedia makes no sense. But this is what Gavin Newsom wanted to do. He put this on the podcast platform specifically so that they could claim copyright infringement when people clicked it and criticized it. This is a way to shut down criticism. It's a way to keep people from being able to use your own words in order to rebut you, have something else to say, give a different perspective, point out where a politician is full of gas, right? I mean, this is what we do. And it's not just what we do, it's what you do. There are plenty of people out in the world, and they're not all bloggers, and they're not all video loggers either, who will clip things, put them up on their YouTube channel, and comment on them. Sometimes they just have commentary streams going over whatever the live stream is. Now that is sometimes copyright tricky. It's tricky when you're doing that with copyrighted material, but not when you're dealing with a governor, an elected governor who's delivering a policy speech. There's nothing about that should be copyrighted, and there's nothing about that should prevent people from being able to discuss it. And this is the reason why Gavin Newsom is one of the leading cowards of our age. This is a guy who deliberately chose to become a podcaster. Remember when he became a podcaster, we were all kind of laughing up our sleeves. Oh, he's a podcaster. I guess he's tired of being a governor, which is very clear. And that's true. It's still a valid criticism. But by doing this on his podcast platform, by making these announcements that have to do with the governance of the state on his podcast platform, he's basically preventing people from even criticizing him in a meaningful way. And for those who do, they can be punished by demonetization on the platforms that support their operations. And it's absolutely absurd. I don't necessarily blame YouTube for this, although I think YouTube is too quick on the trigger with these complaints. I think that they should review them before they take material down. That's their policy, though. I blame Gavin Newsom and iHeartMedia to a certain extent for enabling this, and I think it's dangerous. I think that we should insist that anything that sitting office holder says or does publicly that relates to his office is free and clear with no copyright claims whatsoever. This is an absurd situation, and Larry O'Connor needs to be able to get that resolved. We got a little bit of craziness left. We got a great third hour. We don't want to make it too crazy in the third hour because we got some great people on there who are absolutely not crazy. And we want to clear the craziness before we get to them. Cam Edwards, John Andrasik, Jim Talent. Those aren't crazy guys. Those are smart guys, and we want to make sure that we keep the craziness away from them. But we got a couple of clips that we gotta play. And this apparently was in a House hearing today. Couple of clips that we've got here. Here's Representative Stephen Lynch giving his idea of what ICE agents actually are. Cut number 14.
The Trump administration has tried to sweep aside the fact that this pattern of mass deportation operation is letting dangerous criminals roam free while it picks off peaceful contributing members of our communities. Busboys at restaurants, day laborers at Home Depot, parents who are taking their kids to school. In late March, ICE agents wearing masks and hoodies detained Rumeysa Ozturk. And those of you who watched that abduction, when you compare the old films of the Gestapo grabbing people off the streets of Poland, and you compare them to those nondescript thugs who grabbed that student, that graduate student, it does look like a Gestapo operation. It does look like the Gestapo.
I don't even know what to say about that. It has nothing to do with the Gestapo. They were arrested. No, if they were given opportunities to contact a lawyer, they weren't beaten with hoses. A couple of these cases looks like might be reversed because they had access to a habeas petition. I don't know. Stephen Lynch has even opened a book on what Nazi Germany was actually like. This is from that kindergarten book, Everybody I Don't Like is Hitler. I mean, it's nonsense, but he's not the only one who's calling out the G word. We got Governor Jazz Hands McSnitchline, otherwise known as Tim Walz, in the same hearing, cut number 13.
You said earlier that the ICE agents under the orders of President Trump are a modern-day Gestapo. Do you realize how disgusting a phrase that is, considering the history of Nazi Germany? Would you like to recant that statement?
What I said, Congressman, and I have a long history of supporting law enforcement, I said President Trump was using them as his modern-day Gestapo, not identifying who you are, coming up in unmarked vans, taking people away and giving...
Is it the responsibility of ICE to actually deport illegal aliens in the United States who are here? Isn't that their responsibility?
Yes, it is, Congressman, except that the Constitution is not an inconvenience. It's not an either-or.
Nobody said an inconvenience. He have a responsibility to deport illegal aliens, and the president is going through that process.
That's Byron Donalds. We're gonna cut it off there because I've had enough of crazy. Don't bring me any more crazy today. I've had enough of the crazy. Byron Donalds there for skewering Governor Jazz Hands McSnitchline. My friend John Ondrasik, Five for Fighting's lead singer, here with me in the belly of the beast, I guess, John. Right? I mean, you're there in the LA area at least, and crazy stuff that's been going on out there. So give us a little sanity on this. What are you seeing out there?
Well, breaking news, Ed. We just had a 7.2 earthquake on the Richter scale. I'm told it's Gavin Newsom's tantrum because he was not the first Democrat arrested, and so I'm sure we'll feel a few aftershocks. So we're dealing with that right now. But what more can I tell you? The chaos continues.
So, I mean, I understand that the leadership in Los Angeles has been malicious and incompetent, certainly radical, right? And the community there just went through this tremendous trauma. What was it? 5 months ago? It wasn't even that long ago. It was in January of this year where the Palisades burnt to the ground and Altadena burnt to the ground, and there were wildfires in various different areas, not all that far from you, actually, where you live, John. And are you sensing that there's going to be some sort of political change in Los Angeles as a result of all of this, or is this what Angelinos really want from their government, to defy Donald Trump, even if it's cutting off their nose to spite their face?
I certainly don't think people want this. I mean, on the other hand, we're used to this. It's been going on for decades. It's tough to get around California, but now you can't go on the 101 because you might get a concrete block on your head, or the freeway will be shut down. You can't drive Pacific Coast Highway because they've been so slow with the recovery efforts. So, you wonder if there's ever a tipping point. Certainly the fires, I think, got some people's attention, but the same incompetence, the same insanity that contributed to the catastrophic response to the fires is what we're seeing now. Karen Bass basically blaming Donald Trump for looting. And so again, if it was up to me, I would give everybody in California a mental awareness check, but it's been 20 years of this. And look, if there's ever a time where we'll see a change, it's probably this cycle. I think if Kamala Harris runs, it actually gives the Republicans possibly a better chance. And the ironic thing is, California, when you see them vote on some of the measures, some of the propositions, they are not radically liberal. They're certainly kind of lean more left, but you don't see the radical politicians, and you don't see a majority in Sacramento. So I don't know. It's certainly frustrating. It's scary. To be honest with you, I never thought I'd own a gun. I had to buy a gun after seeing what's going on to protect myself and my family. And I think the Democrats are so desperate for any voice, for any momentum. They're in the wilderness, and I think they think, well, okay, this is our opportunity. Let's start getting arrested. We'll call Trump a fascist. Let's blame everything on him. Let's ramp up the riots. And to a certain extent, it'll probably work, particularly here in California.
Well, I'm just thinking 5 years ago, right, where it did work. It created a sense of chaos that contributed to the momentum that pushed Trump, in that election later that year. The difference, of course, is there's no election this year, at least not at the federal level. I mean, you'll have in about a year and a half, you'll have the midterms, but you're not going to have an election this year. And certainly, I think in the country, there's a sense that people are really tired of this. CNN had a segment on Harry Enton, and this was, I think, on Monday or Tuesday, where Harry Enton was going through some polls and he saw a 40-point flip among naturalized citizen voters who were plus 32 for Democrats 5 years ago prior to the riots, are now plus 8 for Donald Trump and plus on immigration. Excuse me, plus 8 on immigration. Republicans on immigration. It's a 40-point flip. I mean, that's a huge shift. And in this particular case, it's among immigrants, right? Legal immigrants, though, people who came here legally and went through the process. 5 years ago, they had sympathy for this. 5 years later, they are tired of it. They are tired of it, and they want an end to it. And I think that that's true among a lot of different people, and maybe even in California. I know a lot of us like to think that California's lost, but I'm not necessarily sure that that's the case.
You know who may save California? It's actually the Latinos. I've been blessed to work at a family business, as you know, Ed, for 40 years. And many of my coworkers are Latino. We've been working together for decades. They are my best friends. They are my mentors. We celebrate Christmas parties with generations. We have multiple generations working for us. They are hardworking. They are patriotic. They are family oriented. They have wonderful values. But they have been hurt by this insanity from Sacramento and Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass more than anybody, because it's their communities that are now pillaged with crime. Perhaps they came to America to live the American dream and were able to buy a house, become middle class. They cannot let their kids go outside now. Their schools are a catastrophe. So the folks who are being hurt most by Gavin Newsom, the liberals maniacs here in Sacramento, are the Latinos who did it the right way, the immigrants who did it the right way, who want to just come, live the American dream. And that is what nobody's talking about. And I do think you're right. You're seeing that. You're seeing that within African Americans too. So it may be at the end of the day that the people that turn California around are the minorities, because they have to live with it. Most of the white liberals, careening from Malibu, they just like to make their little statement of the day and go to their party with their Hollywood friends. So it is a fascinating time. And I think the more you see the chaos, the more results you might have. But again, we've been saying that for years. We can pray, we can hope, because it is the most beautiful state in the union, Ed. It's such a wonderful place to live. And if we can save America, perhaps we can save California.
Well, absolutely. But you say save America, and I want to we've only got a couple minutes left, and I want to kind of focus on that. We were just showing, some B-roll of the rioting that's going on there, and there's Mexican flags all over the place, and people talking about how this is Mexico, and you can't deport people from here because this is actually Mexico, and it's not really legitimately America. And when people who came to the United States legally because they loved the United States, I mean, that has to be a scary aspect of this, not just to the people who were born here, but the people who came here to be Americans.
Well, again, I think it's important to remember the people that we're seeing protesting in the streets are the same people, Free Palestine on our college campuses. They're the same radicals that we see in Seattle, that Antifa. What we're seeing are Marxists who hate America. It doesn't matter that it's immigration, that it's Gaza. They hate America. But we are seeing a small subset. And I think it's important to recognize this is not everybody. They are the loudest. They are the ones that the media is going to prop up. At the same time, who gives them that voice? It's the governors of Seattle, of Washington, of Oregon, of California. You're not going to see these protests, flare up in Florida, in Texas. So I think it's important for everybody to understand that. At the same time, we've been told for 4 years that there is a rule of law and that everybody is subject to that rule of law. So I think we need to keep that mantra. And if you crash a press conference and on the Senate, or if you break a law here in California, if you assault a police officer, certainly you should pay the consequences. And I think for the first time in America, we're seeing those consequences. And I think the majority of Americans, including the minorities of America, are grateful for that.
Absolutely. John Ondrasik, 5forfighting.com, at John Ondrasik on X or Twitter, whatever you prefer. He's a good friend. He's a good friend to the hostages. There's all sorts of great stuff that John's doing. So go to fiveforfighting.com, find out more about that. Still trying to avoid the crazy in hour 3, and that's why I'm bringing on my really good friend Cam Edwards of bearingarms.com, my Wednesday VIP Gold and Platinum chat partner. And he's looking at me askance about trying to avoid the crazy. But Cam, you got to help me out. We've had 2 hours.
Welcome me on to avoid the crazy? Come on.
That's what I'm hoping, pal. I'm hoping. Now, I love having you on because it gives us a chance to get some the top Second Amendment stories out. Let's forget Alex Padilla. Let's forget Gavin Newsom for a segment. What's going on in the two-way sphere? What should we be looking at today?
Well, so today I think we can look at a couple of things. We can look at North Carolina, where constitutional carry has passed the House and Senate. It is on its way to Governor Josh Stein's desk, where it'll be vetoed. We know that for a fact.
Yeah.
Josh Stein, no friend to gun owners. So then the question becomes, can Republicans get this across the finish line? Can they override the governor's veto? There were 2 Republicans in the House who voted against permitless carry yesterday. But the head of Grassroots North Carolina, which is one of the big gun rights groups there in the state, says that they have every confidence that they will be able to override the governor's veto. So North Carolina will become the 30th constitutional carry state if they're able to do that. More than half the country already, has that provision in place where you don't have to get a permission slip from the government before you can exercise a fundamental civil right. And it's amazing, Adam, in the debate over this, it was like there were no states that had constitutional carry. The Democrats were acting like this was some bizarre new thing as opposed to the status quo again in a majority of states across the nation.
Well,
so
and
we're
look,
looking at that.
Yeah, I live in a constitutional carry state. Just really quickly, I mean, I live in a constitutional carry state. I want to get a permit anyway because you have a little bit more. It gives you a little bit more reach in terms of where you can carry, but also because it's just a good idea, right? It's a responsible idea. So I love the idea of constitutional carry, along with, permit programs, education programs. I think is a better way of putting this. You can do both, right? Texas does it. And I think it works well here.
Absolutely. And I would say, listen, if you're going to carry a gun, if you're going to own a gun, know how to be safe and responsible with that. Now, I don't think the government needs to mandate a certain number of training hours. I think that's on you as a gun owner. And again, not one state that has adopted constitutional carry has seen fit to rescind it. Louisiana adopted constitutional carry last year when it would affect on July the 4th. I just looked today, Ed. Homicides in New Orleans are down by 35% compared to this time last year. And if you exclude that terror attack on New Year's Day, where that guy ran into a crowd with his pickup truck and killed 14 people, homicides in New Orleans are actually down by 61% compared to this time last year. That's with constitutional carry in effect. Now, I'm not saying that constitutional carry has led to that decline. I'm just saying that that decline has taken place with constitutional carry in place. So that's going on. I also I've got a piece up at the Bearing Arms today about a case that the Supreme Court will hopefully be considering in the fall, a case involving a prohibited person, a woman named Melinda Vincent, who 17 years ago wrote a bad check for about $500. Received probation for that crime. She was a homeless drug addict at the time. She has turned her life around. She is now a counselor herself. She's in private practice. She works for the state of Utah as well. She can't own a gun because she was convicted of a nonviolent felony. And so she is seeking to get her Second Amendment rights back. A coalition, including the NRA, the Firearms Policy Coalition, Action Foundation, and the Second Amendment Foundation, all submitted an amicus brief to the Supreme Court, urging the court to take up this case and urging the court to find that nonviolent felons should not forfeit their right to keep and bear arms just because of that conviction. That flies in the face of the national tradition on the right to keep and bear arms.
And I could see this as a constitutional case. Now, I'm going to tell you, and we've talked about this many times, I'm not going to get my hopes up that the Supreme Court will take this up because the Supreme Court seems to be allergic to dealing with constitutional issues around firearms just of late, the last few years. They just simply aren't taking these cases any longer, and I'm not sure why. But I do think here there's going to be a little bit of a tension between constitutional issues and policy issues, right? Is there a rational policy for preventing felons from having it? Yes, but it's usually tied to the idea that felonies are usually violent. And so I think this is a really interesting case.
Well, and I'll tell you, there's a circuit court split here, which I think ups the odds of the Supreme Court taking this case. The Third Circuit has found that at least in the case of a guy named Brian Range, the law forbidding people who have been convicted of felonies or punishable crimes punishable by more than a year in jail should not deprive him of his Second Amendment rights. He lied about his income on a food stamp application like 30 years ago. It was a misdemeanor, but in Pennsylvania it was punishable by more than a year in jail, so he lost his gun rights. The Third Circuit said that was wrong. They restored his rights. The 10th Circuit, on the other hand, considered Melinda Vincent's case and said, no, she doesn't get her gun rights back. There's nothing that the Supreme Court has said, and McDonald or Heller or Brewer would indicate that the longstanding laws depriving felons, all felons, of their right to keep and bear arms is suspect. So I think there's actually a better chance of the Supreme Court taking this case than what we've seen, obviously, with Snope and some of the hardware ban cases. But it's probably going to be the fall before the Supreme Court takes this case. One of the really interesting things to watch, though, with this is how will the Trump administration respond? So Melinda Vincent's attorneys have submitted their brief. You've got the amicus briefs coming from the supporters of Melinda Vincent, but the DOJ's response is not due until July 11th. So we have yet to see what the Trump administration is going to say. Will they defend the statute entirely? Will they actually say that, you know what, Melinda Vincent actually has a point? I don't know. We'll see.
That'll be interesting to watch. Are there any court cases left in this term that you're waiting for a decision on? I actually don't know the answer to this question. I suspect not, because I don't think they took anything really interesting this term. My remarks just prior to this, and because we have
Wesson versus
3
Mexico
weeks.
was the interesting case.
Yeah,
and that was decided. So no, we're not really waiting for any other Second Amendment cases. There are a ton of cases that are in the pipeline that are going to be going up to the court over the summer and in the early fall, including a challenge to California's ban on magazines that can hold more than 10 rounds. That's the Duncan versus Bonnet case. So the court's going to be busy considering some Second Amendment cases when they return in the fall. But no, right now we're just sort of in a holding pattern at SCOTUS.
What are you looking at in terms of federal legislation? I know that a lot of people have been pressing Congress to act on reciprocity, national reciprocity. Are there any prospects for that? I know they're really tied up in budgetary bills and stuff like that. Is there any prospects for the national reciprocity legislation?
What I've heard is that the House is going to start working on H.R. 38, which is the National Right to Carry Reciprocity Act, in the coming weeks. But again, they've got to get the One Big Beautiful Bill settled. And of course, right now, that bill contains a provision that would remove the taxation and registration requirements on suppressors. So that's a big deal, right? And there is a push right now to get the Senate to expand on that and actually remove the taxation and registration requirements on short-barreled firearms as well. That would be components of the Short Act. So that, I think, is really the big push right now on Capitol Hill, is to keep that language that the House adopted in the bill, and then to add on to that and, essentially remove basically anything other than any other weapon from the National Firearms Act. Big question has got to be whether the Senate parliamentarian says that this is germane. I suspect that she will, but we'll have to wait and see on that as well.
Well, Cam Edwards of BearingArms.com, he never brings the crazy, he always brings the rational. BearingArms.com. Go there and get all of the latest on Second Amendment issues. Disco lives forever. See, I'm not bringing the crazy now. I'm just bringing the disco. The guys here, they've got the whole disco lineup.
Now, if they would have just rewritten that song and called it Fever Swamp instead of Night Fever.
Yeah, or you can do Staying Alive if you happen to be living in Los Angeles. Hey-o! All right. Speaking of nothing in particular, today is a big day in Hugh Hewitt's Angel Tree camping effort. We just passed our 248th scholarship to send another deserving child with a mom or dad in prison to the fresh air, fun, and gospel-centered activities at an Angel Tree camp near their home. But we still need your help, because we have about 1 week left as we generate donations from Hugh's audience. We have a banner up at HughHewitt.com, and when you click on it, you can be among his listeners to join the campaign this year. Your gift of $200 will help make it possible to send a kid to camp for an entire week. And to encourage you, here's a special message for Hugh's listeners from Heather Rice-Minus, the president and CEO of Prison Fellowship.
if you're listening and thinking about the opportunity to give, I think of this little boy we caught on tape while he was at camp, and he asks, I hear people talking about God. Well, who's God? And they share with him, it's about the opportunity to meet your Lord and Savior. And so he said, and then they gave me a Bible, and I read it, and it got real interesting. And just this child's, rendition of the experience at camp and the experience of coming to understand that there is a God who came down in the form of his son Jesus and loves this little boy so much. So I would just encourage you, if you feel so moved, to give to a child like that all across the country who can have this opportunity to hear the good news.
It only takes $200 to send a deserving child to Angel Tree Camp, and your gift in any amount will help. Just please go to hughhewitt.com and click on the Make a Difference in the Lives of Prisoners' Children banner. Or you can phone in your most generous gift in any amount by calling 888-206-2764. That's 888-206-2764. And thank you for helping me send these wonderful children to Angel Tree Camp this summer. You'll be making a difference in a child's life for eternity. And now I want to turn to another matter here, retirement and security. There are many good reasons to buy gold and silver. Bank failures, digital currency volatility. AmFed Coin and Bullion is Hugh's choice for precious metals. If you ask AmFed owner Nick Grovich to simplify the case for precious metals, he'll tell you that when President Roosevelt recalled the gold in circulation and paid people with paper money, they received a $20 bill for a $20 gold piece. Today, that would be $3,400. And the $20 bill won't even fill your gas tank. Now, which would you rather own? AmFed Coin and Bullion. Nick's been in this industry for 44 years, and he's proud of providing transparency and fair pricing to build trusted relationships. If you're interested in buying or selling, call Nick and his team at AmFed Coin and Bullion, 800-221-7694, AmericanFederal.com, AmericanFederal.com, 800-221-7694. And after the first 2 hours of this show, and all the crazy that's going on, you might want to be thinking about hedging against the crazy. We're going to be talking with Jim Talent in the next segment, so we'll be discussing probably more of the national security stories that are going on, including what is actually going to happen over the next couple of days in the Middle East, because it is getting pretty rocky out there. Donald Trump was on Truth Social today saying that he is still trying to get to a negotiated solution with Iran. He does not want war. He wants to get a negotiated settlement, but Iran has to give up the pursuit of nuclear weapons in order to avoid military action. Iran is saying that they are ready to rock and roll, and that is not a good sign. And at the same time, you have some of the ISIS gang members that are trying to get the band back together, apparently in Syria and in Western Iraq. That was something that happened today. Yesterday, we moved people out of Iraq and the area there. I think also UAE and Kuwait. Non-essential personnel and families of diplomats were moved out or asked to leave. So clearly, we're anticipating something going on there, and we'll talk with Jim Talent a little bit about that. Might come back with another shortcut or two of maybe the crazy, maybe just a little bit of fun on our way out the door. And of course, looking forward to Dwayne Geronimo Patterson being the guest host tomorrow, and he'll be handling all of the crazy while we all get a chance to sit back and relax. But in the meantime, we could play some disco and have ourselves a real good time. I have not seen anything else on Padilla, but it looks like it's going to be an issue on Capitol Hill. It'll be a 24-hour wonder there. They are trying to change the narrative. Don't let them do it. Digging the disco, man. And I hope Jim Talent is too. Chairman of the National Leadership Council at the Reagan Institute, at Jim Talent on Twitter. I don't know if you're a Village People fan, but this is my groove, Jim. It's just it's what they do with me here.
Ed, you're asking me to confess to a guilty secret, but unfortunately, in this case, I don't have one. I'm not a Village People fan, but if you are, my friend, knock yourself out. It's your show for today.
I appreciate that. This is what's called tolerance. See, this is how tolerance is supposed to work, right? So many things we could talk about. so many things we can talk about with you. I don't think Macho Man is probably one of them, but I want to talk to you a little bit about leadership in terms of foreign policy right now. We can talk about Gavin Newsom all day long, and we kind of have, but there's trouble brewing right now. The Iranians are refusing to back down off of enrichment. Donald Trump is trying to keep the diplomatic channel open. He said today on Truth Social that he wants this to be resolved peacefully, but they're pulling people out of that region. The non-essential personnel, families of personnel are being pulled out of that region. What do you see here, and what are the prospects of heading off a major military conflict?
Well, Ed, I've felt all along that eventually we would have to attack, or I guess I should say the Israelis will attack and we will support them, because the single worst thing that could happen in the Middle East, which is saying a lot, is if Iran were to get a nuclear weapon and the means to deliver it. It is incredibly destabilizing. I think the chance of a nuclear launch, or a cascade first and then a launch, goes way up if that were to happen. President Trump clearly understands that. And as much as he is against war, and we've seen that in the last few months, he understands that that cannot be permitted. So I think what he's doing with the negotiations, and he's doing this, I think, for broader regional purposes, he's making clear that he's going to exhaust every diplomatic avenue. But I sense that tactic is coming to an end. And I think the withdrawal of a number of our personnel from the embassies is a sign of that.
I think that Israel's probably making clear that their patience is running out as well, because they want to head this off before Iran actually has nuclear capability. And they've done this before. They did it in Iraq. We ended up thinking, we didn't like it at the time. We ended up thanking them for it later. And that brings me to something else that took place this week, which was that the National Council of Resistance of Iran held a press conference on Wednesday and unveiled even more sites, or alleged sites that Iran has not disclosed. And this was about a day before the United Nations, I think it was the IAEA, if not it was the United Nations task force, took the rather extraordinary step of declaring that Iran was in violation of the non-proliferation agreement. Now, I think we could all agree that that was always the case, but this ratchets that up another level, and it seems like we're coming to a head here.
Yeah, I really think so. I mean, the IAEA said that. I smiled when they said it, because we knew all along that the Iranians had a program with a number of supposedly secret elements to it. But and then the week before, of course, the Iranian leaders said that the United States demand that they give up enrichment and the nuclear infrastructure was nonsense. I mean, they threw it right back in our faces. So I think this is coming to a head. The mullahs they can't give up the nuclear program. It's the best hope they have for regime survival. And so I think they're running a bluff, and they're hoping that we're going to back down, and I don't believe we will. As a matter of fact, if I had to guess, I suspect that President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu have understood all along that this was something that was going to have to be done. And we've gone through this diplomacy to make clear to everybody in the region and everybody in Europe that we didn't want to do it, but I think it's coming.
Well, I think one of the things, too, about this is that, and I've talked with a couple of the guys at the National Council of Resistance, and what they're looking for is pressure, I think, enough pressure to bear that it will allow a popular revolt to bring down the regime. Now, I don't know how realistic that really is, but they've come close a couple of times. I mean, certainly the people in Tehran, at least, are fed up with the regime, and they don't want this regime to continue. They're being oppressed. It's particularly brutal there. That would be, I think, the best scenario, right? Is that you ratchet up the pressure to the point where the people say, we are going to stop this before it goes any farther. We're going to seize back power. But how realistic is it? Could the people of Iran actually do that?
Yeah, I think it's realistic. I mean, the people I respect who know Iran very well say, and I think we all know this, It was. It's a country with a very sophisticated people who have achieved an awful lot in their history and had advanced very far before the mullahs took over. I think it would be a mistake for our government to say that regime change is an explicit objective. But I also think that if we act in order to protect an extremely important but narrow interest, that is to keep them from getting a nuclear weapon, and we have to attack Iran, I think that will empower the opposition. I think people there are fed up. Inflation is extremely high. The power is unreliable. The regime is cracking down all the time, and not just on the rights of women, but on anybody who's dissenting. So I actually think that by acting to protect our interests and the interests of the region in peace and security, we will help those who are trying to overthrow the regime. Whether it will happen or not, I mean, it's the sort of thing that you never think is going to happen until it does. So it's a distinct possibility.
Do you? We've got about maybe 15 seconds, 20 seconds left. Do you expect something by the end of the weekend?
I'm not going to put a timetable on it, but I think clearly this phase that we've been in negotiations is coming to an end because they're not going to move, and we are not going to give up our demand that they break down their nuclear infrastructure the same way Libya did.
Well, Jim Talent from the, always good to talk to Jim Talent from the National Leadership Council at the Reagan Institute. You can find him on Twitter at Jim Talent. Smart guy, rational guy, 180 degrees from the crazy that we've been experiencing the first couple hours of this show. How do you not melt with Patsy Cline's voice on Crazy, her signature song? And it's crazy. It's been a crazy
one of the finest songs ever written or recorded.
And to this day, just an absolute standard. And I know lots of people have covered it. There's nobody like Patsy Cline doing Crazy. There just isn't. Speaking of crazy, sad news from the DNC today. They have fired David Hogg.
They got tired of going whole hog. Yes.
They no more boss hog or vice boss hog over at the DNC. He's no longer a vice chair. One of, I think, 9 vice chairs. I think both parties overdo the vice chair thing anyway.
I'm sorry, you were just too white.
I was going to say they were shocked to discover that David Hogg actually isn't pretty fly for a white guy, and so they decided to bounce him because
of my democracy.
Because of my democracy.
Yes.
They didn't bounce him, Dwayne, because he was using the DNC email list to raise money for the nonprofit that pays him about $200,000 a year.
Right. No.
They didn't fire him for that. They fired him because he didn't meet their diversity goals, even though he was elected into that position.
You're a white male, and we already have one of those, so you need not apply. The most DNC thing ever, right?
Does this make David Hogg go MAGA, do you think? You think David Hogg goes MAGA? No, I don't think so either. He's too financially deep on that side. I'm not even sure he's going to complain a whole lot because, honestly, I don't think he even really was interested in doing the job. He wanted the job. I don't know that he wanted to do the job. He was more interested in raising money for his own stuff, which is part of the reason why he got crosswise with these guys. But I mean, the idea, this is such an unpopular thing. This whole woke nonsense is so unpopular these days, and the DNC did the thing anyway. They did the meme.
You see, the thing about the Democratic Party, and again, I keep saying to myself all day long that if God gives me in my elderly years, if he gives me the sentience that he did not give to Joe Biden, I'm going to look back on this year as maybe the greatest year possible as far as content. It's the Democratic Party is self-immolating in front of our very eyes. Now, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, they're going to be around for a while, but yeah.
I'm not saying that the Republicans are not capable of messing this up and not capitalizing on the opportunity in front of them, or as Britt Hume said, not being able to pick up the money that they're leaving in the street. But man, oh man, is this not a good week for the Democratic Party?
Not at all. So you're guest hosting tomorrow, Dwayne. The big question is, can you bring the crazy?
Hey, with this party, all I got to do is just Just hang on to the reins and enjoy the ride, right?
All right, Dwayne Janoiswa Patterson, bring the crazy tomorrow. I'm Ed Morrissey. I'm getting the crazy out of here. Thanks for listening, folks. It's been great guest hosting today with you.